A hidden neighborhood challenges a city worker's notion of organization. I discuss this and more on today's episode. Welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I found in my travels. Today it is Short Story Tuesday, so I want to talk about a short story of interest. Today's short story is all about cities and hidden neighborhoods. I am referring to The Street That Got Mislaid by Patrick Waddington, which was published in an unknown year. For those who don't know, Patrick Waddington is a bit difficult to identify because the year that this short story has listed on the website where I found it does not line up with the author's actual life. So I don't know when this actually came out and who wrote it, but it does seem like Patrick Waddington wrote it, but the only Patrick Waddington I could find was a British writer or British actor who lived throughout the 1900s, and he seemingly wrote a memoir, but he might have written more than that, and he was well regarded for his acting career, at least as far as I can find. It might be the case that this is mislabeled or something else, but I can't really find out a lot of other information about it. But it's still, I still think it's worth talking about, especially because of this, some interesting aspects of the story. So without further ado, let's talk about The Street That Got Mislaid. I will do a summary, a little bit of analysis, and we will move on from there. So The Street That Got Mislaid focuses on Mark Girondin. He is a Montreal city engineer, works for the city, and he is proud of bureaucracy and organization and having everything neat and orderly. He jokes to a friend that, like, how do you know that you exist? The friend says, I pay rent and stuff like that. And he's like, nope, you exist because the blueprints, the street city records say that you exist. Otherwise, there'd be no other evidence of that. Like, you live at this address, and nobody can really dispute that, which is not really that logical when you think about it. But during the course of his work, one day he finds a forgotten card for Green Bottle Street, which is identified somewhere on an old map of the city, but it's sort of been taken off the records by mistake or something like that. And this sends Mark into a panic where he's just wondering if something got forgotten all this time. And so the next day he calls in sick to work or leaves early and heads off to this street that is supposed to exist. And he finds that it has been sort of closed off, kind of like there's a door that's preventing people from getting in there now. And he talks to one of the people who live there, and it seems that the homeowners of this particular street have been forgotten, and they've also been untaxed. And they've tried to keep it this way because it's fine with them if they're not getting taxed, but they've had to sort of organize other things just to make sure that they got their mail and whatnot. But they've just had to be very careful to make sure that the city doesn't find out that they still exist out there. This leaves Mark with a choice at the end of the story. He decides not to tell the city that this street exists, in exchange for being able to live in this lady's house that he's talking to as a tenant to avoid taxes and all those sorts of things. And that's where the story ends there. In terms of analysis, there's a fair bit to talk about with this story. The main idea that Waddington is highlighting here is that of organization. Mark loves organization and structure of being able to pinpoint exact things, being rigid in his nature, and it sort of provides guidance for him. But when he finds out that there's a street out there that apparently wasn't properly cataloged and isn't being taxed or anything like that, there's a panic, highlighting how there's an error in this organization that he's noticed. And so essentially Green Bottle Street is the antithesis to his way of living and work. The fact that it exists and it is untaxed just challenges what he believes and throws him for quite a loop. Makes him feel pretty miserable. So the question then becomes, what is Mark going to do? And Mark chooses to let these people have their supposed paradise in exchange for being able to live in said paradise. I do think that Waddington is offering an argument against rigidity, Mark being so structured and things like that, and how, not everything needs to be perfect or properly cataloged, which I would argue is maybe not that great of a point to make, because some things do need to be cataloged, otherwise these people are losing sanitation. They're losing quite a bit. Like, nobody's picking up their trash. So how are they getting it taken away? Unless they're dumping it in like a nearby dumpster, which again isn't the best thing to do, I would say. So, there is an argument to be made against rigidity in here, although Waddington isn't making it the strongest point possible. I also think this is vaguely libertarian, a group of people who are off the grid, who aren't paying their taxes, but are still receiving vital services by paying maybe a bit extra for them, but are still getting the benefits of living in the city as a whole, which is ultimately what libertarians want. They want to be able to live in a city, but they don't want to have to pay taxes to the government, which is very stupid. If you want the benefits of living in a city, just pay taxes. That's what taxes are for. They're there to provide goods and public services, but libertarians foolishly believe that the market will step in and provide good service for the things that the government wouldn't be providing, which rarely it does. It costs extra, and these corporations often try to keep their costs low so people aren't getting as much. And the government doesn't need to be run by a business, no matter who tells you. But that's all besides the point. But this does feel vaguely libertarian. It is important to mention that when talking about this story. Another thing worth noting in this story is the ending, where Mark decides not to tell the city about the street that exists in exchange for being able to live there. So it's kind of weird, because Mark is not doing this for the right reasons. Is that kind of like a commentary on city workers, or maybe corruption as a whole, extortion, some sort of thing like that? It does kind of create a weird vibe to this story. Again, because, he's not doing it for the right reasons. He's doing it for money reasons. Again, vaguely libertarian or vaguely anti-government. I don't think that's quite what Waddington might be trying to say, but that's there, and it kind of feels glaringly obvious when you're reading through the story and you go back and sort of like double check certain aspects of the story. It does have a ring of like what I've heard libertarians and uber conservatives say in the past, and it just feels wrong and foolish to kind of argue that sort of thing. But again, it's just worth noting Mark is not doing it for the right reason, so he's kind of a flawed character. But again, like, Waddington isn't really doing a lot with this story. Like, he's not elaborating upon it, so we're not really. I don't really know how to feel. Maybe it's just played for jokes, but it still feels like a weird kind of way to end a story. Anyway, those are my thoughts on The Street That Got Mislaid by Patrick Waddington. It's a pretty okay short story. Not a lot to write home about, but pretty interesting. Even if the writing and some of the overall messages that it's sending are probably not the best. I'll put a link to it in the description. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below if you think you got something else from this story that I might be missing. Let me know in the comments below. Otherwise, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that more people can find out about this short story or this author if they don't know. Otherwise, join the Discord if you want to have further conversations about books, movies, TV, or short stories, those sorts of things. And until then, I wish you the best of luck in your weird and bureaucratic travels. Farewell.